So right away, visually, you're going to want to look at your waveforms, which are these peaks right on your screen. And I'm just going to zoom in here, and you can do that by using the roller on your mouse, or by going to View, Zoom In, so you can see a little bit more of like what these look like. So these are waveforms. That's just an important thing to know, so you can just kind of like good vocabulary to have in your back pocket. Now I'm going to zoom back out. The first thing to do is just sort of look and try to find the peaks, which are these sort of spikes right here. These are usually signals for blown out audio. So you're just going to want to find like the peaks in your audio, and also see where there are disparities in the sizes of the waveforms. So if you look right here, for instance, everything before this line, there's probably a situation where when this was starting to be recorded, it wasn't, the levels weren't right, or everything was low, and then midway through, the mics got turned up. So you want to find these disparities and try to correct them and make everything as even looking as possible. So the way we're going to do that is we can just highlight. And I think that like one of the easiest ways to do this is when you highlight, you're going to have this little bar pop up, and this is a way for you to adjust the gain, which is basically how loud or soft your sound is going to be. To click and just sort of bring this up and try to let that apply, and just try to make it as sort of on the same level. And I might go ahead and take this peak and bring it down a touch, just so we can try to get it a little bit more even. And then over here, it's also a little bit quieter. There was a lot of whispering on this recording, so it's a little bit of a weird example. But yeah, and then right here, it's also a little bit smaller now, so just adjust accordingly. Right here is maybe actually a little bit too big, so we're going to take that down and just see if we can make it look a little bit more even across the board. And then bring this up, perhaps. When you're doing it, you're going to like want to actually listen through and make sure that it sounds even and that you're not getting disparities that sound almost like you're on a roller coaster, or you don't want it to be really obvious that you've been making these cuts. So if you have something that is just kind of fluctuating from really loud to really soft, you're going to want to go through and just make these changes a little bit more subtle. But just for the example, this looks fine. We're going to go in and try to find, maybe we want to use a clip, because obviously this is 20 minutes long, and you're going to want to go through and just find the highlights. So let's say I'm listening through and I really like something that I'm hearing right here. I can do, on a Mac keyboard, it's FN and F8, and I can just mark that. And then maybe I'm still listening. Also, if you want to move around, you just go ahead and click on this and drag it to get to different parts of your recording, or you can use the arrow keys. But let's say like this is where I want to start the clip that I'm cutting away, and then I have maybe a good place to end it is right here. So let me mark that also, FN, F8. We just have two markers, and we're going to go ahead and zoom in, which again you can do. Also, this is a helpful tool, because if you're zoomed in or out, you can just look at this bar here to see, to sort of like reorient yourself. So you can just drag it right here. And I'm just going to zoom back out really quickly so I can just find our markers. Also, if you want to use this bar, you can adjust how much of it you're seeing, which is another way to sort of like just focus in on what it is that you're trying to do, as it were. So we're going to go ahead and click right here and then drag it across. So I'll just do it again. Click on your marker and then drag like you'd highlight a sentence in a Word document. Same thing, you're going to highlight this. And then we're going to want to cut it out. So if you have a right click, if you're using a mouse with a right click, you can just right click, cut, or in this case, I'm going to copy to new so we can work on this clip and edit it a little bit more. So copy to new, but you can also copy to new by using edit, and then the shortcut. I'm not really sure how to use that shortcut. I'm really bad at Mac shortcuts. But yeah, or if you wanted to remove this, like let's say everything surrounding this, like you really loved what was here and you really loved what was here, but you thought this part was not great, kind of the same principle, you can cut it out or delete it, so you just have that section gone. That's not what I'm doing in this case, so I'm going to put it right back in there, and then I'm going to do copy to new. So now I have, just as you can see, it's just like the 1 minute segment that we cut out. On Adobe Audition, you have a window right here that shows you, it's almost like tabs on Explorer. So if I wanted to see our original, you can see this is much longer. It's 20 minutes long, so this is the original segment that I am taking cuts from. And then again, double click here to go back to this shorter clip. So again, just like we did in the other larger segment, we're just going to want to like go through and fine tune this. So a few ways you can do that would be just again looking and seeing if the waveforms are kind of even. This looks like it could be a little bit quieter, so I might just bump this up a little bit, and also this looks a little quiet. For example, and then this is, there's no waveforms here, so it's probably like a lot of dead air, so you can just delete a little bit of that. I find you don't want to take away all of the dead air because it's going to sound really unnatural most of the time if you don't have at least just, if it's a talk show, just like a little bit of space in between, because it sounds like people aren't taking breaths or, you know, thinking. It just sounds a little bit rushed, and when you're cutting and editing, your primary focus is to make everything sound really natural, and you don't want people to be able to tell that you've been cutting up the clip or doing any sort of post-production on it. Another good thing is to check your endings and beginnings. You want to make sure that you have really crisp intros or outros. So if this is the beginning of our clip, see we have all this space here, and I want it to start right here when the talking starts. So I'm just going to go through and clean that up and then do the same thing at the end. Let's say I said something here that I thought was really funny and I didn't need the rest of this. I'm just going to zoom in. So, and you want to, when you're making cuts, you want to try to zoom in as much as possible so you can just really be precise. So just delete all of that. And then if you look at it, there's still, let's say like this is a little distracting at the end. You just want to be as close to, just make the cuts as close as possible. Great. And then let's see where this is landing. So generally you want to be right around here with your gain, and this is a good monitor. So you want to play your clip through and make sure that you don't have any spikes which would blow out your audio. So for example, if this was a section that was really loud, we have green, 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 and then we're getting into the yellow, and then maybe even if we just had a real problem, like you also want all of your audio to be within this. Like if you're getting overlaps where these are touching each other, that is definitely not good. So you want it to be, for the example though, I'm gonna let's say this is what it looked like when I recorded it. See how we're going into the red here? That is a no-go. That's your audio is gonna sound really bad. It's gonna sound fuzzy and blown out. So you want to keep it as consistent as possible. It's just going to sound smoother. So let's go ahead and undo all of this stuff. Just amplify and get back to where we were. All right, great. So now as you can see, we're really just in the green. And that'll be your go-to way to sort of gauge your volume. This overall is a little bit quiet looking, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up just a touch and hopefully see where we are. Okay, it's going a little bit yellow in some places, which is okay. It's not necessarily going to be super noticeable, but if you're really anal, then yeah, you can definitely go ahead and just fix that up. Cool, so this clip is good. I'm just going to go ahead and save this. Save this as clip 1. So now for a little bit more post-production, now that we have this clip finished, we are in the waveform view, which is what you want to be working in when you want to work on individual clips. But right now we're going to sort of edit things together. So we're going to go into multitrack. I'm going to name this session training session. Very original. And as you see here, we have track 1, track 2, track 3. So tracks are going to be these different sections that you've been working on in the waveform editor. And again, they're in this window here. So we're going to take clip 1, and we can just go ahead and drag it in here. I'm just going to press OK, and it's going to load in. And yeah, see, so that's what we were doing before. A good thing to do, something that I really like to do, especially for a talk show to make it sound more professional, is I really like to add some background music. It just sounds smoother and just more like produced, I think. Now, as you can see, we have, this is definitely too loud, and it's going to be overpowering to our talking clips, and we want this to stay as background music. So we're going to have to go through, oh, and also just as an aside, if we wanted to edit this individually, we could just double click on it, and it'll bring us back to the waveform editor. So if you wanted to just cut this up a little bit, if you were doing something specific with a song, you could do that here. You could, highlight, delete, do whatever. Just as like an aside, so you can do that. But yeah, so this is the part where we want to make sure that we have a good mix, and a mix is basically referencing the volume levels between these different audio tracks and making sure that they are even and not overpowering to each other. So for this, they're definitely, well, not necessarily even, but just making sure that they go together like well, and like they're each as loud as you want them to be, because this is definitely going to be a lot quieter. So we're just going to go ahead and bring this way down. And this, again, was kind of a more quiet track, so we're going to try to bring this up. Also, so you can do that again on this part of the track with like the same way we did it before with the with this gain editor. And we can also adjust the gain here with our, like, this is the gain bar, and it's basically just the same thing, but just one is easier, or like one, it just depends on like how you want to do it and what's easier for you. One nice thing about using the volume bar is that if you click on it, you can control the volume of individual pieces of this. So let's say right here is like we want it to be like louder, so we can just bring it up, and this will just be like a nice little peak. But I'm not doing that right now, but it's good to know, and you probably will have to do that at some point or another. If you have like volume spikes or you get into the red, it's, you can just kind of bring one part down to just make sure that everything stays nice and even. So we're looking pretty good down here. I might want to bring this down a little bit. Yeah, so looks good. And this is just an example, and I actually can't hear what's going on here because I'm recording this audio over it. But it's really up to you, and you're really just going to have to play around with it and find out what sounds good to you, and just use your best judgment for editing and mixing. All right, what else? One really good tip too, just a good way to just make it a little bit smoother, a little bit more professional, is have a nice fade in. So a fade in is when the music comes in gradually. So we have this gray bar right here, and we can just have a little, we can just edit the audio so that it just kind of slowly makes its way to the volume that we want it to. And it just sounds nice. It's just a nice way to like sort of it's kind of like sticking your big toe in a bathtub, getting adjusted to the water temperature, I guess. And you can also just move your audio clips around like this, just click on them and drag them. So you can have, you know, a nice fade in with your music, and then have your talking audio just kind of start right after the fade in, which is just a nice way to make it a little bit smoother and just sounds more polished, I think. Also really important, you're going to want the endings to be even. So to do that, the easiest way I think to do that is literally just to like click and drag it back so that they match up. And well, for the sake of the fade out, actually, we're going to just bring this a little bit outside of this. So that way we leave an allowance of time for this to fade out. So the way this would work would be like, you know, the talking would stop and then the music would gradually go away. And like, you know, this would take like maybe like an extra second or two. It's just, again, another nice way to make your piece sound more polished, I think. One other good thing to do is if you have maybe, let's say, two audio tracks, or you're going to splice different clips together, like if you're making a reel, which if you're watching this, you probably are making a reel. One good way to you can do a crossfade, which is like the pieces will just kind of melt into each other by doing this, and you can see like what we had before, we have this fade bar, but if you border them on top of each other, you just get this. I wish I could play it, but if you're on your computer, you can just kind of do this by yourself, and you can see how it sounds. But it's, you know, one will fade in, and the other will start as the other one is kind of like fading away. Yeah, so, you know, let's say I'm feeling good about this, and I'm happy with it, and I'm ready to just you know, save this. We go to multitrack, bounce to new track. Oh, just really quick, one more thing too. If you want to hear and edit just one of these clips, you can mute just the M button right here, mute, or solo. If you're working with like 7 tracks, it's easier to just do solo, and that means that only this will play. And this is ARM for record. So these are just a few other tools that'll make your life a little bit easier also. But cool, yeah, so this looks good. And we're gonna mix down session to new file. And this is going to combine both of these into one track. So let's just save this session in case we want to go back and edit this and we're not happy with the final product. We just have our scraps so we can go back and adjust accordingly. So now let's mix down in session into new file. So you see this is both of those combined into one. So I don't think I can play it, but this is now a waveform that has both the audio clip and the music in the background. So I'm just going to want to drag this to the end, and we're going to go ahead and you want to click Save As. And this is important. You want to save this as a wave form. You want to do that because it's going to be, if you did it as an MP3, any of these other ones, MP3, MP2, AIFF, they're going to compress your audio and take away from the quality of it. Once you compress it to an MP3, you really can't come back from that. So you're just going to do a waveform and click OK. And you have your mix down. And that's your finished product. So cool. Yeah, hope this was helpful.